Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all the news of Star Citizen from the week just past. I am your host Mac, so let's get on with it. This week we got to see progress on new biomes specifically coming to Hurston and its moons. They answered our questions on the shopping kiosks, plus we took a look at the new revamped Vanduul blade. So for calling all devs this week, the first question asked was, is it going to be possible to overload your ship so much that it cannot take off? And they say yes, but it depends. Now, dedicated cargo ships will have thrusters strong enough to account for these kinds of loads, but for example, if you had an Avenger full of a very dense material, it will struggle to take off, if at all. As you play the game, they say that you will learn more and more about what you will be able to do in terms of transport and your ships to keep the ship from handling well. But things like swapping out to a more powerful thrusters may help you, but then you may need to upgrade your power plant to do so, but then you may need a new cooler to cater for the heat being generated. Potentially removing your weapons could give you a bit of a heads up there, but all that may help you get off the ground. But it's going to be a case of each ship will be different, and depending on how you mod your own ships will determine how well they perform. So next question is, what distance will players be able to detect distant contacts, and will passive and active sensors affect these ranges? Now, the values at the moment they say are very low, and all the ship's radars see the same distance. There was an issue when they introduced them to 3.0 or 3.1, I think it was, and it just set all the radar back to default. So 3.2 will have that fixed. Each ship in 3.2 will have its intended radar distance, but bigger ships, they said, will have a greater range and longer timings to identifying things. So basically speed to identifying and the depth of identifying will come later on. Speciality scanning ships will obviously have a much greater ability and much quicker ability at scanning and getting the information you want. But specific ranges for each ship as they come in will be tested and altered over time, so even if they're in initially, they may not be correct. Third question is, can you tell us more about the party system for the future? Currently, they say they're laying the groundwork for party organisations and communicating. They are working on the group system, which whether they are for party groups or just chat groups, but once done they can add chat between different members, quantum linking together, missions with groups, and then divvying up the reward so you can all go on a mission together. Also having dynamic groups, maybe whispering individuals or whispering to groups and so forth. They are working with Turbulent as well to get the back-end system in for Spectrum chat. They don't want people to have to be in-game to be able to communicate with your group or your friends or your organisation, so you can organise maybe future events. They also want you to be able to join your friends quicker, so if you can see that your friend is getting into a ship at Port Olisar and you want to join, you can click a button and he'll accept it, and then you'll maybe wake up in a bed on your friend's ship or something like that. So basically getting you into games quicker and grouping you up quicker is priority for them, and that should be good. Final question is, what is the status on implementing the original backer stretch goal rewards? If you don't know, when everyone first backed, they got a lot of these rewards which just sort of rewarded the early backers, like an Orc armor or an RSI test flight suit and so forth. When are they implementing them, basically? And they said that they're just going through all the backlogs now and prioritizing things. They cannot say when. They're obviously closer than they've ever been. Original rewards are now prioritized in a list of when to come up next. And hopefully it won't take them too long, because I really want all those stuff, all those goodies that we got promised. Anyway, that was it for calling all devs. Let's move on to Around the Verse. So on Around the Verse, starting as usual with the project update, they said they've made progress on the mining mechanic. The laser rock highlights are in and working. What you're going to see is just visual effects placeholders though. There's 3 levels of breakage with the 4th to be added. They're still working on the physics for these. Rock destruction visual effects work is ongoing as well. They've got specific states like in progress mining, safe mining, and dangerous mining. These visuals will be replaced, so the beam that you're seeing again is not final either. They're also implementing feedback from Chris Roberts for the tractor beam look and the way it acts. They're tweaking the scanning and the mining UIs. We've seen a little bit of this. It looks quite cool. These will all be finalised once the Prospector boom arm is complete. The Prospector weapons, when you're mining, will be in offline mode due to the power allocation. So if you wanted to switch back to your weapons, you would have to stop mining and then reshift or reallocate the power. They are still working on the button interaction and key bindings for mining, which will switch and control the modes, which we will all have to learn when they come around. Anyway, they're also testing to get the FPS AI working in the persistent universe. We can see the AI running in an outpost. They're not behaving as they should. They are continuing to work on the fixes for these. Work is also being done on the death masks for several ships like the reworked Avenger coming in 3.2, plus other ships like the Hurricane. They're doing work on ballistic visual effects for weapons, which includes more natural muzzle flash and less intrusive tracers, which does look a lot better. Audio have done some work on the sound effects for 3.2 weapons like the Gemini F55 light machine gun and the Castak Arms Scalpel sniper rifle. They do sound really cool, and that sniper rifle is going to sound awesome when in a sort of planet environment. Talking of environments, the environmental work continues on hangars and various stations, such as the drone bay. Also added panels for visual interest and AI interactions. Plus, we got to hear the door sounds and see the animations as it opens up, and it does sound really cool. I just cannot wait to be prepping a ship ready to take off, and then as it starts moving, the doors open up. Kind of slow, but I think we'd appreciate them all the same. Hurston planet is coming along with multiple biomes being visually tested and developed, including the landing zone, which is Lorville. That's really coming together, they say. They've got an acidic biome, which is coming along well, doing some visual tweaks to its sulfur pools. Now, I believe that is to be one of the moons, one of the 4 moons of Hurstons. We saw some work in progress renders of the savanna biome with trees and the lighting getting attention. This is going to be the test bed for wind and detail bending, I assume, because they can see the trees bend and then the sort of plants bending with nature. They said that you can really see the visual diversity being developed for Hurston and its moons. We've got to see a bit of a trash biome as well, which is part of Hurston, so each moon may have a single biome to them. I'm not sure if they're going to have multiple, but Hurston will have multiple biomes. It isn't just going to be one biome over the whole place. We've seen the trash, we've seen trees and savanna. We've also seen around the landing location of Lorville these sort of African-style sort of fat trees. They said the Lorville visual development continues with prototypes for artistic direction, mood, and what visual effects will be needed. Kind of looks like a bit like weather. They said they're really seeing great progress with Hurston. It is going to, as I say, it's going to have multiple biomes. There's going to be 4 moons, and they will vary in style like the acidic environment. I cannot wait to be able to get down to Hurston. Anyway, one of the main features of today's ATV was the shopping kiosk. It's inspired by the VMA, the PMA for displaying guidelines. Won't look like them for the final, but it will be a completely sort of reskinned and unique. They'll have branding for each shop, which will be different. And, you know, just to make sure it's not too repetitive. So, Casaba we got to see with the red and white. Looks nice there. But you'll be able to pick an item port on your ship, see what's currently equipped, and then a list of what's available. It'll tell you the stats. You'll be able to compare, and then buy and equip them, or just buy them and store them in your global inventory, which is kind of like a non-physical holding for the moment where all your items will be. I believe you will have to physically send them to locations in the future. It's not just going to be this random non-physical super deep pocket. Shops around locations will sell items that are made from materials which are in abundance in that area, and so the economy for shops tie into the mining, meaning that certain weapons or items that are in abundance at certain locations will be cheaper, which means you can buy them and then sell them somewhere else where maybe they're a bit more sparse and make a profit on them. Kind of like the supply and demand loop. Now, the first release of the shopping kiosk will allow you to buy items for the global inventory or equipping them, and what items are available for each lot. The next step, they say, is to have the shop items and owned items side by side in a list so you can see what you've got. They'll also look at the feedback that we have and adjust it, tweak it, sort of get the flow of the experience getting better. Just updating things that they can't foresee right now. They have the base functionality working. They can see the items, they can buy the items, and they will persist. They're just sort of getting on with reskinning the kiosks so that they're not repetitive. Anyway, the second section of ATV was a ship shape to do with the Vanduul blade. Now, they're making these ship shapes a little bi-weekly, shorter and more refined so that we get more information quicker rather than having to wait a month for each update. Now, the Vanduul blade is kind of the Gladius of the Vanduul fleet. It's getting reworked now. It's a single-seat fighter, quite small, 4-size, 2 guns, weaker than the Scythe, for example, but with a vicious punch. Very agile multi-purpose fighter, fast and very aggressive. The wings fold in for the landing mode, and each wing has its landing gear sort of pad inside it, and then a central skeletal deployment as well. It pulses throughout the ship. Should it pulse when a human flies it? I don't think so, because obviously the Vanduul their bodies pulse to communicate, whereas ours don't. So I don't know if that should just be an aesthetic thing rather than a means to communicate. I don't know. But the dashboard is holographic. It looks very cool. There are no screens, no real clutter either. The Vanduul lore creates tech in an interesting way. So they're kind of seen as scavengers. They absorb other races' tech and then repurpose it, combining things together. They're not too bothered about aesthetics. They just conquer and absorb. They use these ships called harvesters to scrape the resources from the planets and then refine it into materials that they then bind together with some form of silicon-style substance. This Vanduul blade is the closest ship to what they want the ships to look like, final, but they still want to nail down some visual idents for the Vanduul style in their ships. So we may see a little bit of work coming here and there in other places. Anyway, just to finish off with the rest of the ship shape, spoke about the Avenger rework. They're just doing the EMP tweaks, getting the cargo room LODs done, and updating the Renegade library for materials. They're also on the 600i making progress on the captain's quarters and a lighting pass on the hub area. But anyway, that was ATV. We'll move on to RTV, which talks a little further into the shopping kiosk feature, answering our questions. So for a reverse to verse to talking further about ship item kiosks, the first question is, will we be able to buy multiple items at once? And they said the process of the item kiosk is focused on per item selection. So you pick up some ammo, you can pick a quantity, but it's not going to be like a shipping cart experience. You will have to buy and select where you want each item to go, equip it, and then send it to somewhere else. They said they're not sure about the future for carts and shopping carts, but it's early days, so I would think so. It's like most things, like with some other questions. If it's logical, they'll probably put it in. So the next question is to do with the global inventory. So this is something we've heard them speak about quite a few times. Basically, it's going to be a safe place where the player can put any of the items that he's not either wearing or attaching to his ship. You can just buy it and equip it to whatever slot you want, but they want it to be a place it's kind of digital. And again, it's early days, so I expect this won't, like in the future, you'll have to send it to a certain location, like a hangar or a ship's hold or wherever, other than just randomly in nothingness. Third question, will NPCs be able to be the kiosk rather than using kiosks? Now, they've not really spoken about it, but it would be a good opportunity for roleplay. It would be nice to have that traditional buying experience, so maybe in the future you will still be able to go up to items on shelves and buy them that way, rather than having to just use the kiosk all the time. But I agree, it would be nice maybe in places that don't have kiosks, maybe a place making the person the kiosk, the NPC. Next question is just quite a basic one. Why kiosks? Now, the reason for kiosks is to allow CIG to implement hundreds, even thousands of items without having to add them all physically to the inventory of the shops. Also, the stores are not big enough to hold items like, say, a reclaimer thruster. They're just too big, so they need to be able to have them somewhere that is not having to be physically rendered. They're still going to be able to go up to items, as I've said before, and just buy them. The kiosks just allows us to do things in a hurry and to see all the items without having to walk around a warehouse. Although that would be quite cool. Anyway, next question. How do you make the kiosks immersive? Now, they are trying to keep them as realistic as possible, like kiosks we have in shops today that you can use to buy things. They want to make them a bit customizable. The kiosks will always feel quite similar in terms of usability, but they will look unique for each shop's branding. Next question is, will kiosks have a search option? I think it's very important. They say currently no. They will gather the feedback from the first iteration that they put out there, the first tier of these kiosks, and we will say what we want. The most upvoted request will be worked on initially, and then everything else will trickle in. But it does depend on what we tell them and what we want. So again, going back to logic, a search option is very logical. Same for the next question about comparison, like comparing different items. For the first iteration, it's going to be very bare bones. We won't have proper comparisons. We won't have a search option. But the future updates will be more and more likely, just for the sake of it being useful. So next question, will we have a buy history or a previously bought item? Maybe if you're replenishing ammo, you might want to get the exact same ammo as last time and you just can't remember what it is. Now, they said there's no plans for a buy history, but it does sound like a good idea. So again, maybe for the future. Next question is, will there be limited amounts of items? And not likely for tier 0. They say that you'll just have an infinite amount like we have at the moment. You can just keep buying the same thing as long as you've got the cash to. but they are currently now working on balancing the quantities. The inventory counts will have to be limited to encourage gameplay and people to travel to different locations. Plus, it is all a part of the supply and demand economy system, so definitely. So, can we buy amounts of items, like multiple amounts, so maybe 5 magazines? And yes, it will have the option of quantities, so right at the moment you have to go and you click on it, you buy it, click on it, you buy it, it's so awkward, but this time you can multiply them. So can we use kiosks through our Mobiglass? Now that is a very good question, and he agrees. He says there's no plans for it, and it would kind of be like buying online with your mobile. So potentially something like a digital app in the future could be cool, but they do want to have, again, reasons for people to travel to locations. It's not going to be like real life where you just use Amazon to buy everything. This is where the difference between reality or realism and gameplay work. They don't want people to just buy everything on their Mobiglass, because then there would be no point of having physical shops. Second to last question, are the plans for kiosks to use REC rentals? Now, the REC, the rental equipment credits, is a currency for the electronic access game within the game. So it's a game within a game currency. It's not the currency we'll be using in the persistent universe. When it comes to renting things, Jared says this is likely to be an option in the persistent universe sometime, just not likely using rental equipment credits. Always going to be United Earth credits. There may be some variation to it when it comes to renting items, but yes, renting is going to be a thing. So if you don't own a prospector but you want to do a bit of mining with your friends, you can go out, you can rent a prospector without having to pay so much money for one, and then just mine for the duration of the rental and return it. Final question, will there be black market kiosks, maybe in pirate hubs and stuff? Now they said that there's nothing to stop them putting pirate hub kiosks and having the option to do so, but it's just way too soon to say yay or nay just yet. Anyway, that was Reverse the Verse, guys. Let me know your thoughts. So also this week, we got a new booty call post, which was titled, Look Smart. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and thank you to our subscribers, plus a massive thank you to our patrons as you make this possible. If you like what we do and want to help us make it better, follow the link in the description to our Patreon page to learn more.